All right. I am actually, I'll admit I'm a little unprepared for this, and so I think some of this should be directed by questions because I could talk for quite a while about writing for Chaosium. I'll give you an overview of what's happening behind the scenes with the game line. I am the line editor. What this means is that I have a list of games. We've basically got this legacy of tremendous products that Chaosium has purchased for, or published for RuneQuest over the years. And because all of the four owners of the company are quite huge fans of RuneQuest and Glorantha, there's a lot of interest in revisiting many of the classics. And so what that means is that from day one, I had an enormous shopping list of these are the products we would like to do. This list is probably completely impossible to fill. It's got so many products. Everybody wants to see a new version of, for example, a new version of Sun County or a new Griffin Mountain has been suggested to me yesterday. So basically, I have. When I started, there was a bit of legacy, some projects that were begun back before Chaosium, before the new owners actually took over Chaosium, things that were going to go for either be done for HeroQuest or for as possibly for Moon Design as supporting that line. So anyway, everything started to come over for the new game. And I've been in a process of occasionally, I consider them to be occasionally, this hasn't happened in quite a while, but there would be these stories of people who would find like Japanese soldiers out on islands in the middle of nowhere, and they were unaware the war had ended, and they would suddenly resurface 30 years after World War II ended and be, old men falling out of trees and saying like, oh, I'm here to win the war. I have a lot of writers like that, people who come in and who Jeff remembered. He's saying, oh yeah, I talked to this guy at a convention in 2014, and he started writing a new version of X, and then he went quiet for 4 years, and then suddenly he's emailed us with a new, like, I have my manuscript complete, and it's often a little crazy because then I start saying, oh, okay, now I have to deal with this manuscript that's been developed in complete seclusion for 4 years without any idea about what's really happening with the line. But all of that has worked out to the point where now I'm pretty aware of what's going on with all the different products we're doing. I basically now have a fairly fleshed out list of projects going. There's room for more pitches and more stuff because honestly, Glorantha is gigantic. And we could publish 6 books a year from now until the heat death of the universe and probably not cover all that there is to cover, and there could be even more. So what I'm saying is if you have any interest in writing for us, please contact me. I've got cards I can give you, but my email address is pretty simple, jason@chaosium.com. So even I can remember that, which is good. And basically, I start working with these writers. In some cases, if a manuscript has already begun, there has to be a little bit of retrenchment because my primary focus is that every product we publish have both a player-facing side and a GM-facing side. So I regard player-facing stuff as being things players can use, like new background options, new homeland description stuff, so that you can basically create characters in that land, new cults, new things that really interest players and that players can invest in. Because I think that, I think that there's a lot of people who would love to buy stuff but can't justify it, in their head. They're like, oh, this is a GM book. But I think if books always have stuff that players can use, that's a good thing. Because I think that the more you kind of get into the ecosystem of the game, the longer you're going to play it, and the longer you're going to enjoy it. You're going to spread that gospel to other players, which is all a good thing for everyone concerned. It means that you get more players to play with, and it means that your game publisher, like Chaosium, is able to keep publishing these nice games for you. So generally, I work with writers. We try to make sure that there's stuff that both players can use and GMs can use. We go through, we figure out what that is, and then we define the content, and we define how deep is this going to be, what's the best way to sort of open that content, what's the best lens that you can sort of shine a light on that content with, and get the GM to understand the content in a way that is easy to present to players, rather than just a vast wall of information, and so on. I mean, there are some things that I'm quite excited about that I think we'll be doing soon. One of them I'm doing is or rather I'm not doing it, but my writer is doing it, and then I'll get to do it, is we get a lot of people wanting to have more information about playing non-human characters. Show of hands here, how many would like to see for the new RuneQuest, if you're a player? All right, well, I have a book for you. It's going to be a new book, also called Elder Races, like the old book, and this will basically go through the bestiary, which had very abbreviated versions of creating NPCs for each of, or rather playing player characters like Dark Trolls or Ducks or Moracanth or some of they're the ones that we've decided are, there are a few that we decided will not be player characters, and Dragon Newts, Brew for obvious reasons, but Minotaurs, yes, and a few others like that. I think we've got 20 or so playable races in the bestiary, and so we've commissioned an author, Richard August, really great guy to work with. He's basically going through each of these races and coming up with background tables for them, personal histories, a little bit of parent histories, which can be quite fun. He's working pretty heavily with Jeff and extracting a lot of information from the Guide to Glorantha about like what's going on with the different races in this different periods of time, which can be interesting based on their different lifespans, and basically allowing you to create your characters in the same way that they come out as real as a full RuneQuest character or adventurer does. Because, like if you use the rules to create an adventurer, a human adventurer, using the core rulebook, you end up with a really robust character with this well-established background, all sorts of personal history, little quirks, passions, loyalties, fears, maybe even a magic item or something from their history. So they're quite detailed and in-depth. And then if you decide, oh, I'll create a Minotaur, you basically have one profession, and you don't really have a lot going there. So we want to make every single one of these races feel as exciting to the player characters, or to the players as it is. So he's doing this, and then each one of these will have all of this information, new background tables, stuff about family, and then it will have a full-fledged NPC version of the character that will be created along the lines of the pre-gen characters from the core rulebook. So GMs can use these as sample characters. They can create NPCs for use in games exactly using the same method, and the players can use these for their own books. So I would say that is kind of a perfect blend of that, the player-facing and GM-facing thing, in that it's a good reference for everybody. There's like Jeff's magnum opus, the Cults of Glorantha book, that is going to be a huge 2-volume set. It's he keeps writing on it, and I keep saying, you must stop. And he's like, oh, but I just did the Gods for the Triolini. Okay, all right. And then after that, you need to stop. And he's like, oh, but now I've done Sartar as a god cult. And then you must stop, absolutely. So when I get back from this trip and from Dragonmeet, I have to absolutely, as I say, probably administer a cattle prod to say, no more. All right, I need to put this book into editing. But that book, again, it's an invaluable GM reference because it has all of the cults, all of the history, all the mythic history of the world. And at the same time, it's an invaluable player reference because this will have all the cool stuff you need about your cult, going far and beyond what the core book offers, which is a very short cult write-up. And as we all know, Glorantha, the cult, is the primary sort of like one of the defining aspects of your character, like what god you worship and whatnot. So that book should be coming out. That will follow the 5 that I've mentioned. And another book that spun out of that, which was kind of a freebie, is Jeff decided to take all of the spells from the core book, from the bestiary, and from the new cults books, and he's got what he calls the Red Book of Magic. Will be I think, did we auction one off yesterday as part of the silent auction? Yes, and that's the basically the grimoire for Glorantha, and that should be another book that is one of those invaluable table reference books that I think will probably, if I had my druthers, I would shift that forward so it came out first, but because it came out the way it did, it is a little later in the production queue. So that's like an example. I basically work with the writers. We come up with a core outline. We break it out into word counts and deliverables. Deadlines. I know this will horrify probably any project management oriented people here, but I'm pretty soft on deadlines because I find that it's a little source of great frustration to tell a writer this is the deadline, and then I have the writer say, my computer died, I'm going to be late. Okay, and all of these things happen. As any editor knows, there are any number of outlandish reasons that are all perfectly valid why a manuscript is going to be late. So I generally want to hear from the writers themselves. I say, when do you think you can have this done? All right, at that time, I will start hassling you about it. But anyway, books get done, they come back to me, they go into editing, they go over to Jeff for a canon review where he sort of goes through them and says, that's the wrong uncle and so-and-so, and he looks at the family trees, and every so often he gets stuff wrong, and so we have another lengthy argument chain on our Slack channel about, usually between Jeff and Ian, about various aspects of Glorantha lore. And then we finally all settle down and everyone gets happy, and we push the book over to the art director. They get all the art solicited, write art briefs, send those out, come back in, send it into final editing and layout, and there you go. We do a soft release that is generally the PDF first. We send that to proofreaders, and we will make it available to a select few of our hardcore players and fans that we trust for absolutely brutal feedback to just let us know if there's any typos or any bits that aren't clear. We do a final pass on the PDF, and then we release it to the general public for sale, and then we take any feedback, any additional errors that we receive, and then send them through to the printer as one final go-ahead. And so that is our process. I mean, what the process of writing for Chaosium is like, it's a bit of a challenge because Glorantha is, of course, a gigantic setting with a lot of history and a lot of contradictory history, which is both wonderful from a creative sense, but it can also be a source of frustration because I frequently end up with a lot of writers contacting me and saying, I have two references that are completely irreconcilable. Which one is accurate? And then that has to be sort of debated, and we decide, okay, we'll go with that, because the one thing we have learned is that finding that a lot of fans these days are a little, maybe the mood has shifted a bit, but I think people are generally a little happier with a more consistent treatment of the setting. And that the Your Glorantha May Vary is a great table rule, but oftentimes we find that fans are not that excited about source material that is contradictory. And so it's our job now to sort of make sure that there is a bit of wiggle room and that there is some grayness or undefined aspects of the setting. Nothing that we say absolutely can't be defined, but there's a certain level to which we say, could be that, could be something else. We're not going to nail that down yet. But we find, like maps, for example, there was an issue where we had, for the Rattling Wind scenario that we just released, the story said it was set in the foothills of the Quivin Mountains. And so I had access to this old Greg map that showed the Quivin Mountain there and foothills carefully labeled underneath it. And so I said, that's where it is. It's foothills of the Quivin Mountains. And then we released the thing, and then Jeff went, wait a second, no, that's the foothills to the west of the Quivin Mountains. And I said, there's no foothills there on the map. And he said, oh, no, but that's where that is. And so we ended up with a lot of fans going, this makes no sense because it's in the wrong section. And I kept saying, this is the map from Greg Stafford. I'm not sure where the confusion is here. But anyway, that got all resolved. So if you sometimes as fans see stuff that seems a little contradictory, let us know. And in some cases it's deliberate, but we're trying to sort of work to the point where that won't be such an issue, because it does make it a challenge for future writers. And now there's a little more planning of how will this affect the writers on future projects to come. I would like to open the floor now just for questions about stuff, because I'm going to assume that of the, I don't know, 40 or so people in the room here, maybe, that only percentage of people are actually really, really interested in writing for Chaosium. So I thought it'd be a little more interesting too to just have people ask questions about like stuff that's in development, a little more of the continuation of yesterday, so that it's more interesting to everyone here. You have a hand.
I actually do have a question that is about writing for Chaosium.
All right.
So with regard to a new unknown writer,
yes,
how would you go about that? Would you get them to write you small treatment first? Or?
I would say send me a pitch. Generally, I'm not super eager to do tryouts, because I find that that's a waste of people's time sometimes. Yeah. I would much rather have somebody send me some finished work that they've already got. Like, for example, I had a friend who he was doing a pitch or he wanted to write for a game company I will leave nameless at this point. And they published a lot of splat books for a particular game line. What's that?
I've got a couple ideas who it might be.
No need to go further. But anyway, like his tryout was to actually write a complete splat book for them. And so I think he had to write some 30,000 words for a product that had no hope of ever being published, because they already had a manuscript in hand for that. And so, I mean, I was thinking, what a tremendous just waste of effort. 30,000 words. It's not, if you're a professional writer, that's generally, I mean, at the very least, it's a week's worth of solid writing time, dedicated all day, 9 to 5, few breaks, very little time for research. If you're a non-professional writer, that could be a couple of months work or even longer. And so I'm generally more interested in like, what do people want to write? How much passion do they have for it? Can they write a treatment, which would be like a 3 to 4 page, just like this is what the book is trying to do. I mean, that's another thing I try to focus on with all the work I do is I try to ask somebody, like, what is the statement you're making with this book? I mean, like, why does this book exist? Or why does this product or this article exist? Is it filling a need that's out there? Is it just exploring some crazy idea you've got? Who would be interested in this? And then trying to sculpt the outline, and then eventually the word count and breakdown to do that. And usually by the time we get to that point, I've figured out whether, the writer is able to do that. And unfortunately, I mean, like in the real world, I mean, maybe like internet dating, a lot of times you go all the distance there and you think this is going to work out, and then you never hear from them again. And so that happens frequently where writers just decide they're too busy or whatnot. So, or they just realize it's a bigger task than they could handle, like National Novel Writing Month, where a lot of people start out strong on November 1st, and then by November 10th, they're like, what am I doing? So
that kind of echoes stuff in my field work. That, as long as you keep talking to the editors, and let them know what's going on, don't go dark.
Yeah, the going dark is rough, because then generally you can end up with a lot of drift from maybe what the editor is thinking about. And frequently the things that I dread hearing the most are, oh, I had this idea for, and it's like, that would have been great if you communicated that as a question rather than a statement after the fact. But it happens. I mean, I try to do a minimum of sending work back and forth. Generally, if a piece of work is mostly there, I'm happy to carry it over the finish line as a writer and editor, rather than a lot of rewrites and whatnot. So my goal is ultimately that, I give enough writers enough guidance and enough feedback early in the process and throughout, that by the time they hand me a finished draft, it's 90 to 95% of the way there. So there you go. I hope that answers your question. Any others? You.
Yeah, is there any thought for fiction or graphic novels fleshing out some characters?
Yes.
Through
Yes. We would absolutely love to be publishing some Glorantha-related fiction and including graphic novels and whatnot. I cannot say anything about any projects that are in development now or any arrangements. But, for example, if you are interested in becoming involved with anything like that, contact me or contact James Lauder, who is our fiction editor at Chaosium, and he is probably, I guess, one of the most respected editors in the, I can't speak highly enough of James. He's one of the most respected editors in the pen and paper space, and it's actually it's a blessing that he has decided that this is going to be the battlefield on which he will fight, and that he is fighting on our side is amazing. And so we're finding that we're actually getting a lot of respect from even outside the game publishing industry, which in some cases has been its sort of distinct little private, almost its little suburb of mainstream publishing. But we would like to get Chaosium's publishing wing back up to the heights that it was before and make Glorantha and Runequest related fiction as a pillar within that. Perhaps Mob would like to say something about that? Or are you able to? About fiction and graphic novels? Or should I leave that topic?
I'll just briefly say that, as Jason said, we have a fiction editor, James Lauder, and it is definitely something that we have put back on the agenda. You may be aware that James has been doing a very solid job over the last several years stuffing up what had been done in the fiction line before. We had some issues with some authors who hadn't been paid properly and other things like that. And we were also on the Horror Writers and Science Fiction Writers of America shit list.
We were.
We were.
Yes, but
which is really bad. So that's a list of do not work with these publishers because you won't get paid and things like that. And that's a really bad list to be on.
Is it formal or informal, this list?
No, it's on their website. It actually lists publishers that say don't work for them. And
I could put some games companies up there.
yeah, maybe. But we are no longer on that list, and that was very solidly due to the hard work of Jim to track down all of the issues that were problems and concerns with that. Can I just have a brief mention about the Johnstown Compendium and how that ties into what you were doing?
I don't know if they've heard about it yet.
So we mentioned yesterday the Johnstown Compendium's our community content site for publishing stuff for Glorantha and Runequest and HeroQuest. If you're interested in becoming a writer for Chaosium, and I hope many of you are, a really, really good way to get your foot in the door is by having some community content published. Even if it's not for RuneQuest and Glorantha, you could write it for the DM's Guild or whatever. But if you've got, when you write your cover letter to Jason saying, hey, I'm really interested in doing this, here's some examples of stuff that I've done, and we can say, check this out. It's just a really good way of showing us what you're capable of, what you're interested in, and most importantly, that you can see a project through to completion, because ideas are really, ideas are great, but following through to getting something to publication is another part of it. And a case in point is, so we announced the Johnstown Compendium, and I was waiting till we had a number of seed products to go in there to start with. I didn't want to launch it and have nothing there. And so that's why it's taken a little bit longer than I hoped, because I wanted to have at least 3. And we're actually going to launch it on Friday with 4 products to start with, which is really great. And they're examples of people that have written stuff, and Jason can look at what they've written there and say,
yeah, it is actually a wonderful venue because, I mean, ultimately, I tend to think of in RPG publishing, just like novel writing, there are no sprinters. It's only long distance and marathon runners. And that's a big part of it. You need to be able to take something that, you know, execute from beginning to end. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to craft like a short little piece of stuff, but being able to like put a book together from soup to nuts, or even just a manuscript together from beginning to end and have a polished piece of work, that says volumes to me. And so having something under the Johnstown Compendium is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful vector into having a professional gig with us.
And the final thing I would just say about that is there are several criteria there that we do not take into consideration. One is actually quality. So you can actually publish stuff there. It doesn't get edited or approved by Chaosium, just like stuff on the DM's Guild doesn't get approved by WotC, and the Call of Cthulhu stuff doesn't get approved by us either. So you can just go ahead and publish it. The other really important thing is it does not have to be canon. It's your Glorantha. You can write whatever you want. And I don't think, Jason, you're not going to see that as an impediment where you read something and say, this person's got Glorantha wrong, because that's something we can work with you in a formal
in some
product.
cases, I might go, you know, that's actually better than we have, you know. So, no, you know, I'm not going to criticize anyone's work for non-fidelity to existing canon. Mostly, I just want to see, can you finish a product? Does it, you know, does it have the same level of quality throughout? Consistency really will win the race, you know, so to speak. Next questions. I know you have at least one out there. Yes, you, sir.
What about material that would use the Runequest system, but not setting Glorantha? You would do something, say, first century overnight Greek. Would that be considered at all?
That is an interesting question, and I think Johnstown Compendium is open for stuff using the Runequest rules. Oh, it's not?
So no, at the moment, the Johnstown Compendium is just for Glorantha material.
Oh, okay.
So that may change in the future.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it has to be set in Glorantha. So
maybe you could
you
do
could file the serial numbers off you if it's been set in the first century, but it has to be in Glorantha.
Okay.
Global search will replace Romans.
Well, maybe it could be a quest world kind of a thing where you go on you go through a magical portal and end up in, you know, the Roman Empire, and you need to find out how to get back to Glorantha. As long as it begins, and maybe there's a little wiggle room.
So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Glorantha.
Sure, they're just they're a variant of beast people that have not been discovered yet. They live near a lake.
Masters of Duck and Leaf.
Oof. So, next question. You go. And then there's one over there too.
I'm a musician.
Okay.
I'm interested in ethnomusicology of different cultures.
All right.
I've read through not tons and tons and tons of Gloranthan source material.
Mm-hmm.
I've got dyslexia. I find reading big, huge blocks of text a thing, but I'm interested in collating data about the different musical things. So I guess in theory that would be something you could contribute to on the Jonestown Compendium.
Yeah,
I do record music, but
okay.
I don't have a lot of acoustic instruments at the moment.
I think that would be kind of cool, actually, to see something like that written for Johnstown Compendium. I don't know that it's something that would have a home in a existing, like a game-oriented project.
Yeah. Well, I played in...
But I mean, we're publishing a Glorantha cookbook, so there's room for a lot of interesting stuff.
We had something there.
It's in the old companion, isn't it?
But Sirenscape is someone we work with, and they've done a whole lot of sound sets for Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah, and they actually have like a creator studio in it as well, where you can create your own sound sets and things. So that might be something worth investigating to create your sound sets in that.
Because the framework of Drive Through RPG lets you put audio files and distribute them.
I don't know, does it? I'm not
Yes,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You can.
That would be awesome.
Because I ran the camp at PAX. I ran Remembering Caravan.
Okay.
Is that what it's called?
Paul Sullivan's scenario.
Yeah, and it's got this. The character's playing the flute, and there's a song in it, and like I went and recorded that, and I actually bought it recorded to PAX, but it was too loud to be able to play the thing. But I mean,
actually
that's the kind of thing I'm suggesting it because it's probably something that you guys might not have thought of.
No. As a matter of fact, I'm thinking one of the adventures in the Smoking Ruins adventure is actually some interesting musical bits that might be something. Send me an email and let's talk.
I'll email you about it.
It might be some interesting, nice. We could sort of point people at that and say there's a couple of accompanying musical pieces.
Because I've got recording studio equipment.
Okay, cool. There was a question from that corner. Yes.
Sure. Two questions. One, so there was files sent out that were pro forma templates.
Yes.
So you still have to put within that.
Nope.
No, you don't.
That's some people asked for them. We provided them.
Yeah, you don't have to use the templates at all. If you use the templates, we think it's really nice. But if you want to do a different job, that's fine. There are only two key things you have to have in the Johnstown Compendium. One is you have to have on your credits page the correct licensing language, which relates to Chaosium and One Bookshelf and so on. You still retain the copyright of all your work though. And the other is the front cover has to have the Johnstown Compendium logo. Other than that, do what you want.
We'll probably have to figure something else out if there's a musical. Piece.
Sorry, just one more. So there was a comment that no online or digital system content between food, like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds.
Yes, that's a One Bookshelf thing. That's not a out.
That cascades down from the higher level.
You could essentially link to that to say if you wanted an expansion pack to run this in Roll20, then go over.
I'm not really sure how that works. I'd have to look. We have to abide by the rules that One Bookshelf, who owns Drive Through RPG, have for community content. Right. So essentially, everything that we have there is pretty much exactly the same as if you were going to do something for D&D or do something for Call of Duty or the other game systems that are there. Okay. But if it's possible, we'd be up for it.
Just to add to that, can I just duplicate older editions visual styles, or can I do RQ2 stuff on Johnstown?
You can do RQ2 stuff on, you can do Runequest Classic, as we like to call it. You can, yes. Yep.
Or even RQ3 if you were inspired.
We'll make this the last question.
All right. Is there another question?
One question, maybe a stupid one.
There are no stupid questions.
The physics of a flat Earth don't work, right?
That old chestnut.
So the question I have is, when you're extrapolating from what you know to what happens in Runequest, right? Glorantha, sorry. What science can you rely on? So there was a question on one of the Runequest Facebook feeds the other day about, is air thin at the top of mountains in Glorantha? And that depends a lot on how gravity works. And in a flat Earth, gravity doesn't work the same way on our Earth. So, and this is the type of thing that a GM may be asked to sort of, what are the chemical properties of bronze? What do they react with? And I'm just wondering if there's any thought being given to, okay, we don't know exactly the answer to all these questions, but what can we work from to?
I think that the answer would almost inevitably hew towards the mythic, and that, like, for example, my answer would be Like, what possible mythic reason would there be for air to get thin?
Oh, but it's the wind spirits
Yeah.
stealing your breath.
And so my
There you go.
personal attitude is always find a convincing mythological explanation.
Yes.
Like works just the same way as on Earth. And
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah.
nothing weird happens.
But very quickly on that, there is in HeroQuest 1, there was actually a scenario where gravity increases because of an angry Earth spirit.
There you go.
So gravity does not work in Glorantha as it does on Earth because it's not an attraction to mass to a central point. It's actually because you've got lots of little Earth spirits around.
Or all
That has an impact on what terminal velocity is and how you...
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the intro, Daisy. Don't run away. Grab yourself a chair and sit down because the next item of discussion is